Well, good evening, my friends, and welcome to Environmental Coffee House. I am Sandy Shellis, and I wanted to be a distraction tonight, a distraction from King Donald and Sleepy Joe. So we've decided to do. Well, I decided to do, and it says Scream quality updated. Oh, it was updated. Maybe I got some more bars. I didn't get my new signal booster yet, but with Osama's help, hi Osama, I will be getting it. Thank you, Osama. And there are others, Rich, Diana, people that helped, and it's great. And actually wanted to start out before we get going. And I only did this on YouTube tonight. I just wasn't in the mood to do all the multi-streaming. Patricia Kaiser is a wonderful person from Michigan. She sent me a little care package in the mail, and I felt so good when I opened it. It says, "This is me. Busy making a fucking difference." She sent me those, and she sent me, it's soap in a coat. It's really cute. It's like organic, soap in a coat, and it smells wonderful. It's the kind of smell you don't want to use. And then here, I love this because I do, have to when you take the pots, the jars out of a canning, the water bath, sometimes you need and it says, "Bitches get stuff done." So I fit all of it. Because you ask my husband, I can totally be a bitch. But here we are tonight waiting for all of you. And I'm going to tell you, I have a lengthy video that I put together for tonight because I wasn't sure if I was going to come on and do a whole show. I wasn't sure if I was going to do a premiere. So I put this together. It's really nice. And it's... we're talking about organic farming and, things like this I grew, and things like this, and things like this, and things like this. Well, it's green, so you can't see it. It's a green tomato. I made salsa verde and eggplant and canned all kinds of soups and all that. But tonight, hi, Karen Reese. Oh, how did you know I was on YouTube? I didn't even put anything on Facebook. I put it on Twitter, though. And anyway, in between all of this stuff I've been doing, it's been kind of a crazy 3 weeks for me. Even though I got things done, I felt terrible hurt my back. I don't know what I did. But anyway, it seems today to maybe getting a little bit better. So that's a good thing. And I could throw this together. And yes, I do. Frustrated atheist. I have lovely vegetables. I love them. I'm going to cook these tomorrow. And I can't forget this. I have so many of them downstairs. I'm going to live on them. Aren't they beautiful? Beautiful. Beautiful. And growing this year was a challenge because as I've said before, I laid down on a yoga mat and planted the garden. My husband usually is the garden planter. And this year he's working so many, all these weird hours. So thing is dirty. I lay down on a yoga mat and I planted it. So everything grew. And of course, when, all year you start the season, it's like April. The seeds go in the greenhouse. And from the greenhouse, then you get your little babies, your sproutlings and everything. And then, I have squash. And he's asking me, do you have squash? Yeah, it's in the kitchen. I didn't bring it all in. I don't have enough room for it to show you. So anyway, you get the greenhouse going, and I still have vegetables. I still have the Brussels sprouts in the garden, and I still have beets in the pot containers, and they're good until they're good for a while to get bigger. The beets are getting bigger. And Kate, she says she's currently separating garlic for planting on Saturday. She has 250 bulbs to take apart. Well, I've got a good show. You can take apart your bulbs while you're watching tonight. I really did put together a little, it's a half an hour though, but it's some beautiful scenery. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. And then what we're going to do is afterwards, we're going to talk about a few articles that I have tonight, starting with the controversy in a way that is organic farming. And Kim, I don't know why she can't hear me. Everything's fine here. Everything's fine on my end. Kim, I don't know what's going on with you. All right. Well, hi, Gary. Okay, it's great to see everybody. I really hope that you enjoy tonight more than you would enjoy watching the rest of the blowhards on television. All right. And we're going to talk about these beautiful things. No, and Kate's so right. The seasons never end. I have 2 greenhouses in my dining room that go by the window that have lighting, and it keeps my cats out because I would have lighting all over the, dining room, but I have 5 cats. They'll eat everything. But it's great, and everybody knows about gardening. Osama Gardens, he's with us, and I think everybody does this. And Karen, you want my borscht recipe? Okay, it's really easy. It's vegan, and it's fantastic. I made a lot of that out of beets I had that already were pulled. So anyhow, we're going to watch this together. It's really nice. One of the videos that I weave together is actually my area. It's actually Congressional District 23 in New York, Western New York 23. It's a beautiful, beautiful video that Tracy Mitrano, she is running against Tom Reed for Congress in my district, and I am all for her. She's a wonderful person, and she had her crew put together this most magnificent video, but also the farmers are talking, farmers in my area. I live in a predominantly farming community. And then I put in some other videos that a couple of others. So we're going to get started with that. And actually what I'm going to do is, since I'm going to be with you, I'm taking the phone right into my room and I'm going to watch it laying flat. And then when I come back, I'll feel better. It's a very nice put together, calming, and these are lovely people talking about organic farming and climate change. Yes, you have year-round growing. It's beautiful. You're beautiful. You're yes. We don't, but I can grow my lettuce all year inside. That's what I'm bringing in my lettuce, and it's nice dark green leafy lettuce, but that's home gardening. So this is more pertaining to farming tonight. And vegans, please have an open mind. Please. It's about life. Yeah. Clay, you grew. Well, there's other people that I know that are, of course, much more proficient. I don't personally grow it. Hi, look at this. See, I am literally, Blue Raven Art and Craft, is that Ginny? Sandy, I am literally gardening right now as I listen. Just sowed a lot of seeds. See how much we have, all of us in common, because we really all do love it. I don't think Karen Peterson's with us tonight, but she's got Karen and Basil have amazing organic gardens. They are just, their gardens are beautiful. So, anyway, I'm going to get started on this. We have 25 people with us. Don't forget to click like, and let's watch this video. And don't lose attention. It's absolutely beautiful. Okay? I promise you'll enjoy it. And so will I, because I can lay down and listen. Here we go. Enjoy.
It took hundreds of thousands of years for the human population to reach 1 billion. And in less than 200 years, that has increased to nearly 7.5 billion people. Many scientists calculate the sustainable population to be about 2 billion people. which means we need to manage our resources and food production very carefully to cater to the extra 5.5 billion people. As populations have grown, farming practices have become more intensified to maximize crop yields and ensure that we can feed our ever-growing population. Fertilizers and pesticides are used on crops, and animals may be kept inside in more densely packed sheds to maximize milk yields or egg production, or speed up the time needed for the animal to be ready to be sent to the market for meat. In this video, we are going to look at an alternative to conventional farming, organic farming. We're going to see what it is in theory and the pros and cons of this method in relation to other modern agriculture methods. Organic farming currently accounts for about 1% of agricultural land worldwide. It focuses on sustainability and is thought to have less detrimental effects on the environment than conventional farming. This has led to it being proposed as an alternative to conventional agriculture for helping to overcome the climate change crisis we are currently experiencing. But the debate continues, as it is not a perfect solution. In theory, organic farming should not use chemical fertilizers, herbicides and pesticides or feed additives for livestock. It requires the farmer to use more natural alternatives. This results in lower yields, but the farmer can sell their product at a higher price because consumers believe the product is of a higher quality. Instead of fertilizers, manure is used. This recycles waste and improves the soil structure. However, it is smelly and more difficult to apply than chemical fertilizers, and also means the farmer has less control over the mineral content they are putting into their soil. Crop rotation is used to reduce diseases building up in the soils and to strengthen the soil composition. Certain crops, such as the legume family, so peas and beans, fix nitrogen from the air and increase the nitrates in the soil. This makes the soil much more fertile, and so farmers rotate legumes with their other crops. Growing multiple crops is, however, less efficient and produces lower yields than specializing in one or fewer crops. Instead of using herbicides, weeding is the preferred organic farming technique. This is of course much more environmentally friendly because it is chemical free, but it is very labor intensive. Although this does mean more jobs available, which is a great thing. Organic farming is thought to maintain the biodiversity better than conventional farming because fewer chemicals are used. There are more bumblebees and insects in the area because pesticides haven't been used. Weeds and non-crop plants can grow as herbicides aren't used. Biodiversity benefits the food chain across all levels, from the plants up to the foxes. These are the theories of organic farming, and is how we farmed for 100,000 years before the Industrial Revolution. It is generally thought that organic farming is much better for biodiversity, and also produces a healthier product because less chemicals are used on it.
Organic goes so much further than just what you're putting in your body, which is important. I mean, you don't want to be putting harmful chemicals in your body, but it has such a greater impact on the environment. I think the more people support organic, the more they're voting for like a more resilient food system.
I like to think of organic farming and the work I do as a real conversation with nature. The more that I can understand and work with her, I think the better off we'll all be. In the research I've done and the thinking that I've done about this, there is no other way for us to get through this unless we start better caring for our soil. It's a source of resilience, it's a source of fertility, it's a source of nutrient and water cycling. Everything that I do as a farmer rests on how I care for my soil.
It's living plants that put carbon in the soil much more than dead plants. While that plant is growing, it's actually sending carbon into the soil that feeds the microbes, and then the microbes feed the plant.
It's really all about cover cropping. You know, the cover crops, as it's growing, it's basically assimilating that carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into its biomass to create that biomass. But if you do a tillage operation, what's happening is you're taking all that biomass and you're putting it into the soil, and then bacteria are quickly decomposing that biomass. But a lot of that carbon just ends up in the air again as CO2. The bacteria are consuming it and they're breathing. But with the no-till system, all of that biomass stays on the soil surface. So you're relying more on a fungal decomposition, and the fungal decomposition basically retains more of that carbon, gets that carbon back into the soil instead of putting it back into the air.
If you're eating beef from a commercial, mainstream, big box grocery store, you are contributing to global warming because of all the transportation of the animals to the feedlots, transporting all the corn that uses all the pesticides and all the fertilizers on the field, transporting that to the feedlot. At our farm, where the cattle are always on pasture, yes, they do produce a little methane as they burp and ruminate, but because of all the hoof action and moving the nutrients back into the soil, they're actually sequestering more carbon than they are in carbon greenhouse gas emissions. We would have a cow herd because of the benefit to the soil, even if they didn't produce such awesome tasting food.
This pandemic has really brought home to me, and I think to a lot of people, how important farmers are. The local farms are in a position to feed people in a way that the grocery stores are not necessarily as capable of doing.
If I can control what my animals eat, where they're grazed, how they're cared for, then I have built certainty into my system, which means that I can provide that certainty to my customers and my community and ultimately to our world.
Farming conventionally gives you some very good short-term gains. I mean, you could spray herbicide and kill your weeds. I mean, we battled weeds really heavily the first few years until we got them under control. We don't want to be creating super pests. We want to be creating really biologically active farms.
If you care about your family, if you care about your community, and if you care about your world, then by virtue of those three things, you care about soil. And organic farming is a way to provide support and stability and resilience and vitality and a healthy future for all of us.
My name is Autumn Stoshek, and I own and operate, along with my husband, a small orchard and cidery. And we make traditional method sparkling ciders from the apples we grow on our certified organic farm. I've always felt that there's a very, very fundamental part of being a human that is having a relationship with the land that you are occupying and live on, and realizing how much we are just like a tiny little piece of a very, very, very long timeline, and how at the same time we have this capacity to have a profound impact on the land that we're living on and taking care of. As a young person, I saw in our region a lot of economic decline, and part of that economic decline definitely was the loss of a rural economy that small farmers had in this area for a while. And that always struck me as really sort of ironic or odd, given the abundance of natural resources we have here. I mean, it's a pretty unique spot in the world where we have all the rainfall that we need, and that we can draw fresh, clean water out of the ground sort of almost endlessly, and that it's sunny and not too hot, and that it gets cold in the winter but not too cold. So I think that abundance, combined with being privileged enough to grow up on this piece of land that I could caretake for, really inspired me to try to get creative and think about how we could make a living off of the land. We have a 75-acre farm, but we're only intensively cultivating about 12 acres of land into the orchard, and the rest is like a wonderful natural wild habitat that supports the ecosystem that our orchards are part of. We produce about 24,000 bottles a year. What that means is that there's a full-time job for my husband, myself, and our employee and our intern. And we distribute to 8 different states and 1 other country. We're now distributed in Scotland. It is actually possible to like grow and build a fair economy off of agriculture, and the support has been especially strong for small producers, and branding New York State itself as like a craft beverage producer, I think has helped create that community, and it's good for everybody for sure. When I think about climate change, the biggest thing I think of is extremes. We may get weather that's just way too warm too early. That sets the spring phenology off. The frost-free date is May 30th, and that's still true. Like, we still sometimes get frosts that late. If you have a warm up in March that causes the blossoms to open up in March, then the chance of you getting like a really big freeze later on is really high. And that's actually happened twice in the past 6 years, where the crop across the state was reduced. So that's the one thing that is really scary and really impactful, because if you lose your crop, you lose your crop. Like, what are you going to do? Last year, it started raining in August, and it literally didn't stop for 9 months. I thought, oh, our English cider varieties are just going to love this weather, because I felt like it was in maritime England, you know. That kind of extreme can create a lot of stress for trees. They didn't get enough sunlight to photosynthesize. Their roots are soggy because the ground is saturated all the time. With a tree, it's like this perennial plant. It lives for a long time. It's pretty resilient, you know, but on the other hand, it's not like you can replace it. So it's not like an annual crop where you say like, all right, this was a crop failure, we're gonna try again next year. And so now I wonder what kind of stress we're gonna see next year from the effects of that 9-month soggy wet period. I think that, like everything else in our economy, we have an incentive to turn things into dollars as efficiently as possible, but we don't have any penalty for externalizing the costs of doing that, whether it's into the environment or onto workers or people living in the environment. And so I'd love to see some type of system of reward for farmers who are banking carbon, for example. Just that alone would suddenly change the game, and people would start thinking about perennial cropping systems, for example, or they would think more about recycling nutrients, or they would think more about reducing tillage and keeping the soil covered. I think that's one of my best ideas.
My name is Tor Oshner. I farm in Newfield, New York. We farm 1,200 acres of organic field crops, and I'm also a part owner in a flour mill, Farmer Ground Flour, and Wide Awake Bakery. Although I don't work at those places, I'm part owner and use them to market my crops. We grow corn, soybeans, wheat, rye, triticale, buckwheat. We do a lot of hay, sell to organic dairy farmers. And we also process seed here and sell to distilleries and malt houses. We sell seed to other farmers. We grow different cover crop seed for King's Agri Seeds and Seedway. So we're, I guess, a diversified grain operation, and I've been here since 1990. I grew up down in the Hudson Valley. I didn't grow up in a farm family. My dad was a 6th grade social studies teacher. My uncle was a farmer, and I got interested in farming through going to his farm in the summers, and went to Cornell University for agriculture. Liked the area. I dairy farmed for about 4 or 5 years with a guy from Cornell, and then when that didn't work out, I moved back here and had a Volkswagen Audi repair business, and then started this farm. I started with a ½ acre of vegetables and built my way up, and now 100% of our family income comes from farming. How I got into organic agriculture is driving a sprayer on the edge of a field, looking over to the right and seeing the wellhead to my house right there. I never thought about that. When I was at Cornell University in the early 80s, there was no mention of organic agriculture. My weeds class was all about spraying chemicals. I thought it was the greatest thing on earth. That moment there of realizing, oh, this is actually going to go down through the soil and I'm going to drink it, started my brain turning about the interconnectedness of what I do with the effect it has on everybody else. And once I started thinking in those terms, I started, when I was out farming, looking at all these neighbors around that all had wells and really thinking about what I was doing here. And that started me down the path of discovery in terms of what is organic agriculture, what is a different type of agriculture. In my small tenure of 20-some odd years as a farmer, I've seen this, the weather is getting crazier and crazier. We're getting more and more really heavy downpours. It's getting increasingly difficult. I mean, last year it was so wet, we didn't get our soybeans off until almost the end of January. And by then they were almost flat on the ground and we lost most of our crop because it just would not stop raining. And it's getting increasingly difficult to get a good quality crop in. You know, I mean, it makes me nervous, not just for my future. How are we going to survive as a species if the weather keeps getting crazier and crazier? We're going to have years where there's no crop. And then what are we going to do there? What can we do to make the system more resilient? Don't do tillage that leaves the soil completely bare. Do a minimum tillage job that leaves more residues on the surface. Always working the organic matter back in. We used to bale, we grow a lot of wheat, a lot of rye, grow a lot of oats and spelt. They produce a tremendous amount of straw, which is all good organic matter, is worth a lot of money if you bale it and sell it. But we've gone to selling no straw at all and taking all that residue and chopping it back on the soil. I mean, this literally costs my farm probably at least $50,000 a year to do this. But I feel like if you read about soils, one of the things that makes soils resilient is high organic matter content. So we're trying to always put crop residues down. And we have years where we don't even take a crop that we sell off. And we're just growing organic matter and building soil. What the government is doing that's good, that whole crop subsidy thing, I'm not a huge fan of, although I do participate in it. What they do have that's good and what could be promoted more is programs through NRCS and Soil and Water that give subsidy payments or incentive payments to plant cover crops and diversify the mixture of crops that guys are growing. As an example, this year, Soil and Water is giving Tompkins County a $60 per acre payment if you plant a cover crop that is going to overwinter and cover the soil as an incentive to guys to get the soil covered, reduce erosion, and reduce pollution into the lake. The programs are out there. Maybe those need to be promoted more. Maybe the payments need to be a little higher instead of giving us so much subsidy to just plant corn and soybeans, because this is taxpayer money, right? Okay, we need farmers, we need food, but the whole problem is food is too cheap, period. It's so cheap farmers can't make a living growing it. And that's really the issue. And I think if farmers have money, they're making a good living, they're not so strapped trying to extract every penny they can from the land, then they can do some of these extra things to conserve it. You know, it could be that the guys are trying to farm so many acres just to try to get by that they don't even have time to do it. So I don't know, do we create a soil loss corps like the Peace Corps and a whole bunch of young people are going around with no-till planters and going behind the corn silage fields and putting rye in? Hey, maybe that's awesome. You know, I mean, there's a lot of cool things we could do. I don't know.
I'm Carol Titus. We have a Adventureland farm, the two of us. It's kind of a a base for all the other things that we do in the community.
We've done all kinds of different things. We've raised crops, corn and soybeans and so forth, and Holstein replacement heifers and the hogs, and then Angus cross beef cattle, and then we finally got into the Devons and made the decision to switch from kind of a typical beef operation where you feed grain and so forth to an all-grass operation. And we also got involved in a new fencing technology around 1980 that really allowed us to manage the animals on pasture better. And since I think about 1990, the whole farm has been covered with grass. We haven't grown any crops, we haven't plowed anything. And so we have a pretty rich pasture land that's very diverse in the crops that are on it. And I'm really happy with that method of beef cattle production. We're really a grass farm. We raise beef cattle, but this is really a grass farm, and it's the grass that we manage. It allows us to be more flexible with weather conditions. We've had some challenges with too much rain, with not enough rain, but generally when we do what we're doing with rotational grazing, we can make adjustments that allow us to go through the season without any major disasters. The main subsidies are in corn and soybeans and other things like that. And they certainly do move the market in a certain direction. If corn is really cheap because it's subsidized, then beef farmers and livestock producers will feed more corn and more soybeans. And that's really the reason that what we're doing is not a mainstream thing, because research and research money has always gone into corn and soybean production since the 1950s. In the last 4 years, we have not really had what I would call a normal season. We had a year of really severe drought. The only other time we had a drought as bad as that one was in 1980s when Mount St. Helens erupted and sent a huge plume of dust across the continent, and we didn't get rain for a couple of months. This was that kind of drought. The fields just dried up. There was just nothing there. Last August, we had 9 inches of rain fall on our farm in about 2 hours. We actually did not have a lot of water remaining on our farm after that storm. It came down so hard and so fast that it moved right to the creeks and down to the lake, where it caused all kinds of damage. So that's kind of a fast motion example of water runoff. And all that water just ended up down in the lake. So when we have runoff, we want it to be clean runoff. The algal blooms and things that we've been experiencing lately in the lakes, it's certainly, agriculture is part of that, but there are other causes for it as well. Certainly anywhere there's a sizable community, there's so much hard surface in city areas, and the water just runs into the drain sewers and out into the water supply. And when people use chemicals and fertilizers and things like that on their lawns, that's where it ends up. And it gets there a lot quicker because there's a lot fewer filters that it goes through before it ends up in the water. But also there are some lakes in the Adirondacks that are miles and miles and miles away from any source of agricultural pollution or community pollution that are also having algal blooms. So this may be partly related to the kinds of changes we're beginning to experience in the weather. It's something that everybody has to deal with, and everybody has to look at their little piece of it and see what it is that they can do to improve that situation, but it also needs a lot more research to understand what's causing it.
Well, in the early 1990s, the farm crisis was just coming to a close, and my wife and I had split a partnership from my brothers, and we were looking for a way to make a living, and farm prices were poor. We were not able to maintain a good standard of living being farmers, so we had to look at niches and alternatives. And the big thing organic did for us, it's a tremendous marketing tool. And we already knew that having more diversity on our farm made our farm more productive and made our farm stronger. but we didn't have markets for a lot of the crops that would have been good to have in our system. And when we started selling organically, we suddenly had a market for almost anything we wanted to grow. When I was in high school, this unfortunately dates me a little bit. I've been around several decades, more than a lot of people. We would hear about the first frost in some valleys of this county coming the 28th of August some years. This was back 40 years ago. Today, most of New York went well into October before the first frost. We're not expecting a frost here until sometime in mid-November, maybe. The biggest negative consequence has been the unpredictability, where, for instance, 2012 was such a warm season. We had our fruit trees were all blooming in early March. That's not normal. That's not when fruit trees should be blooming. And then we had one night of freak frost in April that destroyed the crop. Now that's a big negative. We're also getting much more intense rainfall. Over the past 30 years, meteorologists are telling us that we've got 70% heavier peak intensity of rainfall. We're getting much longer periods when it's of dry weather and much longer periods of extremely wet weather. So the extremes are all going in all directions. The general trend is toward warmer, but it's the unpredictability that is really hardest on farmers. This spring, for instance, we were caught in a very long wet period, and crops were not able to get planted, and very little of the corn was planted at the normal time. So we're fortunate that we were abnormally warm in the fall, because very little of the corn would have matured if we hadn't had an abnormally late fall. Now that still has lowered yields, because corn that's not planted at the prime planting season doesn't yield as well as corn that is. One way that we've responded to that as organic farmers, and this is where the organic market has been tremendous for us, is we've increased the diversity on our farm. And our best insurance against climate change is increased diversity, so that we won't ever be wiped out on everything we grow. When we have all our eggs in one basket and we get a bad year for corn, we've got a real disaster on our hands. And I don't consider crop insurance risk management. That's only disaster management. The subsidy structure has pushed our farmers toward what's called program crops. Those are crops that are being encouraged with different types of price supports, and since the recent trade agreements have gone away from direct subsidies, but we have hidden subsidies, so they become subsidies on insurance, crop insurance payments, for instance, or the ethanol mandate, which requires a certain amount of the fuel that's burned to have ethanol in it, which creates artificially a market for some of the corn. That makes us more dependent on that one crop, especially. It makes us more dependent on the crops that are considered program crops. And it discourages farmers, frankly, from going into these other crops that could make us more resilient and that could be very useful in this extreme change in climate. We grow, at one time I think we counted over 20 crops. And a lot of our crops are cover crops or double crops, where with climate change we've been able to grow 2 crops. For instance, we can harvest our malting barley and then plant a crop of dry edible beans afterwards, because the season has gotten long enough that that's possible. I think climate change is the elephant in the room. We're not farming in the same environment that we did 40 years ago, and we're certainly not farming in the same environment that we will be in 20 years or in 30 years. And to be able to adapt to that, we have to recognize that we need to become more flexible, more innovative, and more ready to try new things, more eager to try new things. To me, our saving grace is going to be biodiversity. It's going to be having more diversity on our farms, and also having our soil covered more of the time, having more cover crops, because the carbon that's in the atmosphere, much of it used to be in the soil. If you take New York soils, when Western agriculture started here, when the first settlers came, the organic matter would run 5 to 6%. At this point, it's difficult to find farms that average over 2% in this state. Now that means we've lost close to 2/3 of the organic matter that was in that soil. We can do the calculations. It's a huge amount. We talk about the amount of carbon being released by fossil fuels, but we really should not forget the vast amount of carbon that is being released from the soil, but also the amount that we could be storing in the soil if we change the way we manage that soil. So climate change is both a threat and an opportunity for agriculture.
I hope you guys enjoyed that. I really liked it. It was easy to throw together the videos, and I just thought it would be so nice tonight to talk about something positive. And I think the chat was great, and thanks for, I felt like I was with you. But now I want to go into a little bit of the things I prepared to talk about tonight. And as we watch these absolutely beautiful people talk about their farms, here we have Karen, you're still with us. Karen Reese is still with us. Great. Here we have the technos, okay? And this guy, James Temple, writes about organic farming. Now, this is Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Of course, they are they're going to have something to say, right? So this says organic farming is actually worse for climate change. The practice cuts greenhouse gas emissions only if you ignore the inconvenient fact that it requires a lot more land. Now, he makes a point because when you think about it, our population is ridiculous. And, the bigger the population, the more the land. So as I'm, of course, not going to read the whole thing, it's just really interesting, the stuff that I pulled up. Right here, they say organic practices can reduce climate pollution produced directly from farming, which would be fantastic if they didn't also require more land to produce the same amount of food. So they go and talk about how organic farming is a lot of clearing, and the research on it, that organic farming produces more climate pollution than conventional practice when the additional land is taken into account, blah, blah, blah. There was a paper done on it. They said good news is it would cut the direct greenhouse gas emissions from livestock by 5%. I'll see you later, Kate. She said she could stop video. And from growing crops by 20%. So it's really an article, and this is what's out there. The debate. I was looking on Twitter, and people actually do. They do debate, talk about these things. The practices. Okay, so he says organic practices is definitely 1.5 times more land. This is what they say about this study. And it's in the link, so we're going to go on to something else. I'm just wanting to highlight to you what's out there, so that it's not just, oh, we love our organic food, because we do, but there's always a controversy, and that's probably the petrochemical companies behind that. And this one is organic food really better for the environment it's called State of the Planet. And that's the next show we're going to try to do. Our State of the Planet. And you're certified organic when you walk into the farmer's market, and then talking about 3% of sales. And I was reading about Bhutan, who said by 2020 they were going to be all organic, but then they are not. They have not made it there. But Bhutan's a pretty cool place. It's widely considered to be a far more sustainable alternative when it comes to food production. The lack of pesticides and wider variety of plants enhances it. So this article was from Colombia, and then they go down and they talk about the polarized debate. They talk about over organic versus conventional farming is heavily polarized in academic circles. Of late, the conversation about organic farming has shifted from its lack of chemicals to its impact on the greenhouse gas. In 2018, Nature found that organic pea peas farmed in Sweden had a bigger climate impact, 50% higher emissions as compared to peas that were grown conventionally. And I had that chart, and I don't have it now. But organic farming, but it doesn't solve all the environmental problems. Well, I don't think anything will. So soon after the paper was published and widely covered by various news organizations globally, several researchers criticized the study. So here it goes, the back and forth. it's have humans have controversy, right? Now, I have this Rodale Institute. Andrew Smith, he was a chief scientist at the Rodale Institute, lashed out in a post saying it was irresponsible to extrapolate a global phenomenon based on 2 crops grown in one country over 3 years. So I guess the researchers that were doing that they did not have a very good methodology. So there had to be more data. Would have been better with a bigger sample. Now, here we go. It's estimated by 2050, the demand for food is going to increase by 59 to 98% due to the ever-increasing global population. There it is, global population. We talk about it. It seems to mix into almost every show for some reason. It seems climate change, population, growing food, all of it has to do with human beings. As the populations of our wildlife goes down, the populations of the humans go up. They go up. So they talk about the limited land areas that will be available for farming. So organic can be great, but if you're feeding 5 billion more people than you were when I was a kid, it could be a problem. So the researchers argued that with fewer crops being grown locally, these 2 countries, they were talking about England and Wales, did not solely rely on the organic farming. If they used an alternative form on a smaller scale, it could result in a 20% reduction in carbon emissions. See, and then they go down, Columbia goes down to talk about the blurry line between good and bad, and Sonali McDermott, she's an assistant professor at the Department of Environmental Studies at New York University. She says that it's very hard to generalize across any farming systems or label conventional or organic farming as good or bad. They have very different manifestations depending on where you go, which of course is true. All right, I'm not going to go through this one all the way. It's a pretty long one, and they even describe it. You can go back and read it. To eat organic or not to eat organic. High costs, they talk about, it costs a lot to eat organic, and in our at least in the United States right now, people don't have any money, and it's difficult to do that. I'm just blessed because I live in an area of farmland and farmers markets. It's just right there for me. I pass my neighbor's house, and my Amish neighbors, if I don't have something, I can always get it from them because they grow it right up the road, and it's just wonderful. But I'm a lucky example. I'm a blessed example of this. So the expense. So, and then the next article segued, it is the Rodale Institute. And this Rodale Institute, they are definitely into natural, and they have a series, The Truth About Organic, and you can download it. They talk about glyphosate, which is a big problem with conventional farming. And you go into, even with anything, the Bayer now, it's not Monsanto. They throw it on you. It's in the stores. You go into any of those home stores, and there's the cases are so big. The Natural Progressive worked in the industry, another channel. She knows. She absolutely knows. It's a hotly debated thing. This guy, he won Dwayne Johnson won he won $39 million in compensatory and $250 million in punitive from his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma because of being around pesticides and working with them. So why are we still selling them? So that is why organic farming is preferred, because we don't want to use all these pesticides. However, and then they go down. It's a pretty intense website, so you might want to check it out. But they go down and they talk about approved materials list and all that. So that's a good resource. And then, but this one was shaping agriculture. Now here we go. This is Bayer. This is Bayer. Remember, they bought Monsanto, and Bayer. Here we go. They've got their propaganda. They're talking about conventional farmers and how farms are fighting climate change. Okay, let's see how Bayer's getting into it. They aren't just on the front lines. They're working to address its root causes. So they go into all their feel-good stuff about farmers and the weather patterns and make weather-based decisions every day about their crops and let's see how they're going to fight. Let's see how Bayer wants to fight climate change. Okay? They talk about droughts and all these different things. This is a short statue corn, grows lower to the ground, making it sturdier and less likely to snap in high winds because it's genetically modified. So what else could be useful during a drought? How about a crop that's bred to tolerate it? So scientists that think they're doing the right thing because they've got to feed 5 billion people are coming up with these mechanisms to farm in the most efficient way that they say. Here, how about a crop that's bred to tolerate it? Drought tolerant seeds help farmland stay productive during dry times. And these large farms are buying this stuff worldwide. Bayer is actively developing solutions like short stature corn, a variety that's bred to grow lower to the ground. That way it's less likely to snap in high winds, which reduces crop loss after a storm. So this company, don't let them fool you. They understand climate change and they understand it's going to hurt their bottom line, and they're looking for ways like crazy to keep themselves profitable. They care about what we eat. Right. But I believe the scientists that go into this field, it's private. They probably get paid very well. But I do think a lot of them think they're doing the right thing because they feel that they're feeding, the masses in countries that need help and can't always organic farm. I'm not taking their side. I'm just telling you what I would think a corporate scientist might think and feel when they're developing these things. They feel like they're doing the right thing. And then they talk about carbon and I guess they're here curbing the methane emissions with stronger rice. And so Bayer is this is interesting though. Let it lie. I don't know. I think they lie about glyphosate, but they're making this so very rosy, But this is good. Conservation tillage. How about no tillage? Like we talk about no tillage, that's covering the soil like we're going to do, covering the beds. But they'd say traditionally farmers turn their fields over with those big machines at the end of each season to remove the weeds, but better weed control solutions mean they can leave the soil undisturbed. Ooh, what are their weed solutions? Spray? They have it says, it's not telling you though. They're talking about many modern agricultural practices. Conservation tillage saves farmers resources like time and energy while being more sustainable. What is it? Includes all forms of reduced tillage. Tillage is the practice of plowing soil to prepare it for planting or after harvest, which I'm not doing, to remove crop debris from the field. For example, no-till involves no disturbance of the soil, which is what I'm doing, and reduced till or strip till involves minimal. So the benefits of this practice include improved moisture retention and soil erosion. Some of that is a good thing. And they're talking about biodiversity, but also, they're saying the truth. Our planet isn't getting any bigger, but our demands of it are. That's why agriculture is finding ways to grow enough on the land we already use for farming. More efficient seeds allow for better harvests without expanding agricultural land. This is all about feeding you, baby. This encourages biodiversity and preserves carbon sinks like forests that sequester greenhouse gas. So what Bayer is saying is that by their development of genetically modified plants and conservation methods, not going out and using more land, conserving forests, that they have solutions. They have solutions. They were talking about the air, and they said the invention of nitrogen fertilizers allowed farmers to meet the food demands of a growing global population over the 20th century. This innovation fed billions of people and saved countless lives. But today, 3% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions come from the use and production of these fertilizers. That's why Bayer has partnered with Ginkgo Bioworks to form Jean Bio, a joint venture that's looking to use soil microorganisms and their nitrogen-fixing genes to help crops like corn, wheat, and rice extract nitrogen directly from the air, right? Lowering farmers' dependence on synthetic fertilizers. A more sustainable future means finding better answers to even our best solutions. As climate changes, so will agriculture. Solutions like the ones Bayer is working to create help farmers curb greenhouse gas emissions and preserve natural resources. So what do you think, guys? Are they the boogeyman, or are they a corporate? Are they corporate stewards now that they're not Monsanto? Now that Bayer bought it, who isn't even a company from the United States? So perhaps let's see what the chat says about this article. Have you been talking about it? Yes, Osama says save the forests so they can go to sell them to chop them up as fuel. Yeah, you're right. Of course, I don't trust the corporations, so why didn't they do this sooner? You're right. I am just playing devil's advocate, guys. There's always more than one way to look. Nostradamus says there is more than enough food to go around. Overconsumption and wastage is a problem. Of course, that's one of the problems. Everything in Western societies that goes to waste. Now people just eat out of dumpsters. I mean, it's really, we live in a crazy society, right? But yes, that is a point. That is a really good point. And Kim, if you have to leave, I'm almost over anyway. I just wanted to go over some of this stuff to stimulate your brain, and thank you, Karen. Yes, I enjoyed, as I do, creating every show. There were a couple more articles I can't go through, but this is obviously a scientific article that shows the organic diet intervention significantly reduces urinary glyphosate levels in U.S. children and adults. And it's kind of sad and sick that we have to worry about glyphosate in kids' urine, but we do. And then one more, which was an EcoWatch article from 2017, which was debunking alternative facts about pesticides and organic farming. So this is interesting. They're all going to be in the links if you decide you want to take a trip into learning about what's going on with pesticides and climate change and Bayer and corporations organic. See, there are organic approved synthetic pesticides. So it's important to know this stuff. It really is. And I pretty much I'm done with the articles. I think it was a really good night to get your minds off the politics, even though the video clip was from Tracy Mitrano, 23rd District. She's running against Tom Reed, Republican Trump ass-licking toady, as Sam Mitchell might say. And I do have something to announce for Sam. I promised him I would. He did a video and he wants everybody to come watch it. It is the article that he is going over is The Guardian. And it is, he said it is it. It is hands down the best journalism he's read. The Great Unraveling. I never thought I'd live to see the horror of planetary collapse. And this writer, Joelle Gergis, is Australian, and she also wrote for the IPCC. So if you get a chance, you should go to Collapse Chronicles and participate in that video. Okay? So basically, I just want to say goodnight and thank you. I'm at the hour mark. And Gary, thank you. And Raza and Rich, Diana. Rich says they're finding glyphosate, Roundup in children's cereal. Yes, we have some serious problems. And until Bayer addresses this is not the way people should want to go with those kind of pesticides. They want to do natural remediation techniques. Perhaps they can redeem themselves. But I don't know. Can corporate anything redeem themselves? You know? You could all write that article. All right. Oh, okay. Oh, you did see it. Okay, somebody did see it. That's really cool. Well, you made the rounds to each channel, each family. Well, listen, good night, guys. It was a wonderful evening, and it was good to see you all. I hope you enjoyed it. I did. I enjoyed it. We're working on Friday, maybe tomorrow. I'm working on a couple of projects. We're hoping to do Sunday. We were going to do a State of the Planet, but we can't get all our things together, so it's going to be Nicholas, me, and Jen. Nicholas Humphrey, meteorologist. So bring your weather-related questions, okay? All right, peace out and good night.